Well, all it took was a little bit of a greasy game against the Seattle Kraken and a 3-1 win for the Golden Knights to lock up first place in the Pacific Division, first place in the Western Conference, and a Tuesday date with the Winnipeg Jets in the first round, Winnipeg being the second wild card. So as it shook out, the Western Conference wound up being pretty much exactly what one would have expected at the beginning of the year. The Golden Knights atop the Pacific Division, with the Edmonton Oilers in a close second, the LA Kings in a slightly less close third. The Central Division shook out, again, exactly as to be expected. Colorado Avalanche winning the division, with Dallas and Minnesota finishing in second and third, respectively. The wild cards were a little bit of a surprise. Given how the year started for the Winnipeg Jets, it shouldn't come as a shock that they slid into the playoffs, but the real surprise being the Seattle Kraken. Obviously, Golden Knights fans are going to be watching those series with some level of intensity, but nothing on top of, or no level of intensity will beat the way that we're all going to look at our very own series against the Winnipeg Jets, which is what I'm here to preview. Now, the Golden Knights this season against the Winnipeg Jets are 3-0, and if you can't remember the last time we played the Winnipeg Jets, that would make two of us, because I couldn't remember it until about 20 minutes ago. When I remembered, it was like middle of December. Yeah. Crazy. It was a very long time ago. Stars of that game was Aiden Hill in net. Daniil Miramanov, yes, that's a name we haven't heard in a hot minute, scored twice. Jonathan Marchessault scored twice, and I believe it was a 6-5 win. It was 6-4 for most of the time, but I'm pretty sure like Scheifele or something potted one with 2 seconds to go to cut the lead to 1 with no time left, so it didn't wind up mattering. And the Golden Knights have been pretty dominant of the Winnipeg Jets all season, but that was, early iteration Golden Knights. And I'm not entirely sure whether the VGK is better now at the end of the regular season than they were just before the Christmas holiday, when all the injuries really started to pile up. But that being said, you don't play the games in November, you play them in April. We're here in April. This is the team in front of us. Now, I understand the hesitation of a lot of fans, because the last couple of times the Golden Knights have gotten the matchup they wanted, coming into the playoffs or in any playoff series, it's always been a little bit hesitant. I think back to the way I reacted when Montreal was the Golden Knights' Stanley Cup semifinal playoff opponent 2 years ago, and we all know how that went. Or when the Dallas Stars upset the Colorado Avalanche in the bubble to play us in the Western Conference Final, and we know how that went. Or playing the San Jose Sharks in the first round, and we all know how that went. But I think this one's a little bit different, because this Golden Knights team is very talented. Now, there are a lot of positives to look at, and there's also a lot of talking points going into this series, and given that this is just a stream of consciousness, we're going to hit most of, if not all of them, at a little bit more detail than anybody probably needed. So, on the Golden Knights side of things, there are a couple of players that I really think are the highlighters and the most important players to take a look at in this upcoming series against the Jets. Primarily being the play of Laurent Brossoit, which has his own storyline, as he was a member of the Winnipeg Jets, traded away 2 years ago to be the backup to Robin Lehner when the Golden Knights traded away Marc-Andre Fleury. And he's playing against his old, tandem partner in Connor Hellebuyck, who still plays for the Winnipeg Jets. Laurent Brossoit has been exceptional this year. He is 7-0-3 in his 10 starts, interspaced with some injury. He's got a save percentage somewhere in the mid-920s, I think. And he's got a goal against average hovering around just below 2. He is one of the best goalers in the NHL right now, albeit a very small sample size. And he, held the fort very well for the Golden Knights in the last 2 games of the year, which wound up being must-win games for the organization, against the Seattle Kraken, allowing 1 goal in both in wins 4-1 and 3-1. So Laurent Brossoit, this is one of his first playoff experiences in his career, and it's got to be his first playoff experience as the certified #1 goalie. I've seen on Twitter and I've seen around hockey news, especially people at TSN trying to push a narrative that, Jonathan Quick is your day 1 starter. And I love the idea of Jonathan Quick being there, but he's a really good insurance policy. Say Laurent Brossoit has a bad game tomorrow night in game 1, gives up 5. You've got a 2-time Stanley Cup champion, Conn Smythe winning goalie on the backbench, knowing that this is probably his last run at the Stanley Cup. And so he's there, he's motivated, and if that doesn't go well, you got Aiden Hill waiting in the wings. And if that doesn't go well, you've got Yuri Patera waiting in the wings. We've got 5 goalies in this system, 4 that are healthy, that all have wins at the NHL level this year against teams that may or may not be better than the Winnipeg Jets. But, the goaltending is the big thing that the national media is talking about. Oh, what are the Knights going to do without Logan Thompson? Oh, what are the Knights going to do without Aiden Hill? Oh, Robin Lehner wasn't playing this year. Oh, they trade away Marc-Andre Fleury for nothing, and look where he is now. The fact of the matter is the goaltending underlying numbers, especially with Brossoit and net, have been really good. Brossoit hasn't lost in regulation yet, and if he keeps that up, the Golden Knights will go very far in the postseason. So while there is this narrative that, oh, they're not good enough at the goaltending position, I would be less worried about that because of what's going on in front of the goaltenders in the form of the defense core. And I'm going to layer the defense core as a whole as the biggest deciding factor for the Golden Knights in the outcome of this series. Now, it's tentative right now. I've seen it reported on Twitter a few times, and I think Jesse Granger's put out a few things. Like, all the Vegas hockey insiders have kind of had conflicting reports, but they're all saying about the same thing. It looks like Zach Whitecloud is going to be back. I remember against the Dallas Stars in Game 80 of the regular season, it looked like he was done. He got his knee landed on, it bent weird, immediately down the tunnel, no weight on it. I thought, oh, great, he retore his ACL like he did back in, I believe it was December against the Bruins. And that kept him out for 2 months, 3 months. But it looks like he is back. So we have our top 6 defensemen back. When the Golden Knights got their top 6 defensemen back later on post All-Star break, they were just unbeatable. I believe they were like 9-1-0 in their first 10 games after getting the top 6 defensemen back, the opening night D-core roster. And when you have elite shot blockers like Alec Martinez and Braden McNabb and Alex Pietrangelo, first, second, and eighth in the NHL in shot blocks, respectively, that goes a very long way into being sure to control a series as well as insulates a goalie who may be experiencing the blinding lights of the playoffs for the first time as a starter. So the Golden Knights defense core is likely to be what decides the series because they have the biggest amount of reach and scope from the Golden Knights side of the ice. Now, the other storyline, obviously, outside of the goaltending, injury bug, and the defense, is 2 main storylines up on the forward core, that being Jack Eichel's playoff debut. He's played 470 some odd games in his career, and this will be his first game in the postseason. Now, it's not his fault. He played for the Buffalo Sabres, and the Buffalo Sabres are horrible. But he may be a little bit, awestruck, dumbstruck by the stage, by the attention, by the fact that, he is on the Western Conference regular season champion, Pacific Division champion, 2022-23 Vegas Golden Knights, with all the expectation that comes with that. But mercifully, it looks like he may not be alone, as, obviously he doesn't have a letter on his jersey. He's not a captain. He's not an alternate captain. And he's on a team of a bunch of players who have been there before. And something tells me Eichel's going to be incredibly motivated with the opportunity to say, okay, here I am. You guys all thought I was a bust. I'm going to go win a Stanley Cup and dunk on all the haters. I mean, I can be optimistic as a fan. I would love to see Eichel go full-on beast mode. He's been a point per game all year. If he can be point per game in the playoffs, VGK is going to go pretty far. I wouldn't be overly concerned. And what helps me feel even better is the reporting that Mark Stone is likely to be on the Game 1 roster. He was reactivated off of LTIR, I believe, this morning. And so, yeah, all of Twitter will say, oh, cap circumvention. Just remember the Tampa Bay Lightning won 2 Stanley Cups this way. And, if you're really going to cry cap circumvention, maybe ask Mark how many back surgeries he's had in the last 10 months. Yeah, I'm pretty sure, whatever Tampa Bay hangnails that were keeping him out for 2 or 3 months on LTIR just to get him to the playoffs is a little bit different than having major surgery near and around your spinal column twice in a 12-month period. But Mark Stone coming back is huge. That's the captain, that's the emotional leader, that's the experience, that is elite power play, that's elite shutdown defense. And while it shakes up the line, it shakes up the forward core in a very interesting way as, Stone slots back in and he was taking line rushes on the 3rd line. Could you imagine if you're the Winnipeg Jets, you have that staring you in the face saying, okay, you've got the first line, you've got Eichel, you've got, Barbashev, you've got Stevenson, you've got whoever is up there, and then you've got Carlson, you've got Smith, you've got Dorofeev or Amadio, you've got the 3rd line, which is hopefully going to be Barbashev, or not the 3rd line, right, because Stone's on the 3rd line. You're going to have Kessel in there somewhere, you've got Waugh in there somewhere, you've got Howden in there, you've got Kolesar in there to knock heads together. Forward 1 to forward 12 is going to be a little bit of a mismatch, especially forward 7 through forward 12. I'm not entirely sure how the Jets match up. So if you look at it from the Winnipeg Jets perspective, like obviously you have the game changers in the play of Laurent Brossoit for the Golden Knights. You've got the VGK D-core, you've got Eichel, you've got Stone, you've got Stevenson, you've got this, that, and the other. We have to look at the other side of the fence too, and there are a couple of names that are going to be very important to deciding the series as well from the Winnipeg Jets side. First of these being their top line, or their top players in Mark Scheifele, Nikolai Ehlers, Kyle Connor. Those are players that are very important to, how this series is going to go. Those are offensive players. I know Scheifele hasn't been the same since he almost killed someone in the 2021 playoffs when he got suspended for 7 games. And, the Jets are a little bit of an older team, and they did have a little bit of a shaky end of the year, but they are still dangerous. Scheifele is one of the best. He's one of the best at setting up a cycle in the offensive zone. Wheeler, Ehlers, Connor, they're all very good. That's a very dangerous, potent offensive 1, 2, 3, 4 punch that have given the Golden Knights fits in the past. So obviously you have to be aware of that. Obviously you have former Golden Knight Nate Schmidt on the back end, and if you've been a Golden Knights fan for as long as I have, which is 6 years now, you know that players that played for the VGK tend to play very well against us in pressure situations. So I wouldn't be surprised if Schmidt scores a very critical goal some point in the regular, or some point in this season, or some point in this series. But none of those names that I've listed, Wheeler, Ehlers, Schmidt, Scheifele, none of them can hold a candle to the sheer magnitude of the importance of Connor Hellebuyck. Now, Connor Hellebuyck is the reason that I was very hesitant that the VGK would get this matchup, because I know what he can do. Like, obviously, how we all remember in the first inaugural season, that series against the LA Kings the VGK had, there was barely any goals, and all it took was Fleury having one bad game, and that could have flipped that series around. It took a historic level of goaltending from Fleury and from Quick to make that series what it was. Connor Hellebuyck's one of those goalies that can single-handedly steal a game at any given night. He could just show up one night, pitch a shutout, and that's that. There's nothing you can do about that. He's just that good of a goalie. You don't be in the conversation for the Vezina every year. He's essentially the Andrei Vasilevsky of the Western Conference, because he can just rock up any given night and steal the game from you. So that's a little bit concerning. The real kicker will be if the VGK can solve the Connor Hellebuyck Rubik's Cube early on in the series, get him into questioner's confidence. Heck, if they go out on Tuesday night and put 5 behind him at the Fortress, I won't be as concerned. But if it is a hard-fought, one-goal game like the Golden Knights have been in all season long, Hellebuyck can win those with pretty good frequency. And so he's really the deciding factor. If Hellebuyck is 2017-18 Hellebuyck, when the VGK ran into them the first time in the Western Conference Final, he was basically unflappable for the first 2 series of that playoff run. And if he's like that, it's going to be a very long, very stressful stretch of 2 weeks for the Golden Knights and the Golden Knights fans. If he has been late 2023 Connor Hellebuyck, it may not be as stressful, because he has not been playing as good in the last few weeks as he was, especially at the start of the year. I believe the Jets only won 4 games out of their last 9, and those were games they had to beat when they beat Nashville and Calgary. So they've been playing real hockey to make sure that they didn't fall out of the second wild card. But that's really the kicker. Now, I'm really hesitant to make predictions because obviously I'm a fan. I'm very biased. But the real thing that I've got to go for here, and I've said that a lot of players or a lot of institutions will be the difference maker. Obviously, Hellebuyck is a difference maker. The Golden Knights defense core is a difference maker. But the one thing that really sets the VGK apart from the Jets in this series is depth. The fact that you can say, okay, Stone, welcome back. You're our captain. You've been on the first line forever. Here, we're going to plunk you down on the third line because, our first and second lines for the last, 30 some odd games when you've been out have been exceptionally good, providing really good offense. What do you do as the Winnipeg Jets coach? How do you match up against, Mark Stone on the third line and Nick Waugh on the fourth line and Phil Kessel somewhere interspersed in the lineup, either on the third or fourth line? What do you do when you have Chandler Stevenson, one of the fastest players in the NHL, going on the fourth line, going up against the Winnipeg Jets bruiser line, who I don't even know who they have. Since the Jets lost Dustin Byfuglien 4 or 5 years ago, they don't really have any muscle. So Keegan Colasar is in there to bash around, and if he's not playing good, you've got Teddy Bluger. If he's not playing good, you've got Pavel Dorofeyev. There's so many options from the Golden Knights forward depth to pull from that the third and fourth lines can be just a massive mismatch going into this series. And it wouldn't surprise me if the third and fourth line are the ones that pot the most critical goals throughout this series. I know the first line, Eichel, is going to be very good. And I know the second line, and Carlson and Smith have all the experience. And Amadio's been hot right now, and Eichel's been great. And, it's just all this oozing of confidence from the Golden Knights side. I just have a feeling somewhere it's going to come deep down from the roster. Somebody deep on the depth chart is going to make a difference. I remember, what was it? Some random player for the Tampa Bay Lightning was the one who scored the Stanley Cup winning goal 2 years ago. And I remember Nick Paul was a huge difference maker for the Lightning against the Leafs last year. It's these deep down the roster contributions that can make a humongous difference just in the series, but also within the playoffs. Now, I'm a little bummed that it looks like Dorofiev's off the game one roster. I'm a little bummed that it looks like Bluger's off the game one roster, but you never know what you're going to need until you get, you never know what you need until you get there. And plans don't often survive first contact with the enemy. And so if the Golden Knights can just get through game one, or at least get a split of games 1 and 2 at the very worst, I think they'll be fine. The last time the Golden Knights played the Winnipeg Jets in the Western Conference Final, they got embarrassed in Winnipeg in game 1. I think they lost like 5-1 or something, and then rattled off 4 straight wins and a trip to the Stanley Cup Final. This is not the 2017-18 Winnipeg Jets, and this is not the 2017-18 Vegas Golden Knights. Bruce Cassidy is not going to let this team play pond hockey, and the Winnipeg Jets thrive on pond hockey and the other team making mistakes. So if I had to put a label on it, I'd say the Golden Knights win this in 6. I would love to say 5. Hell, I'd love to say a sweep, but I'm going to remain cautiously optimistic and say VGK in 6. They win it in Winnipeg. I believe that would be next Saturday. It'll be a fun 2 weeks of hockey, and I'm really excited to see what the Golden Knights have in the tank for this very exciting playoff push. I think if ever there was a year for the Golden Knights to go all the way and win the Stanley Cup, it's with this year, with this team. All the adversity they've been through, all the things that they have to do. If we're going to look one round ahead, they have a date with either the LA Kings or the Edmonton Oilers, but I'm not going to worry about that because we have to take on what we have in front of us, and what we have in front of us is the Winnipeg Jets. I wonder if we will be able to ground these Jets just like we did 6 years ago. That being said, it's going to be really interesting. I can't wait to catch it all. And I know I didn't do a recap for Game 82 against Seattle, but, it wasn't a really good game. So, what's the point of talking about a game that was really ugly the whole way through? What matters is the Golden Knights won the Pacific Division and the Western Conference regular season #1 seed and have a pretty clear shot all the way to the Stanley Cup Final. So it's going to be an exciting next couple of weeks, hopefully next couple of months, hopefully 16 wins await us in the next little bit. And I will be here to chronicle all of it with you guys. Can't wait for this run. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next one.